Well, under normal circumstances, this would be an absolute gift to the coalition. They could just waltz in and say, look, we'll protect your jobs, we'll keep the coal mining going, we'll keep the coal-fired power plants running. What's the coalition doing? What have they missed here?
Well, look, it's another example of how there is really diminishing choice for mainstream Australians. Both sides of politics have very similar policies. I accept that there's differences on the margin with how the Coalition and Labor say they're going to get to net zero. Yes, at the federal level, the Coalition has encouragingly commenced a discussion about nuclear power. That's a positive for us. But look, overall, when Scott Morrison went to Glasgow and signed Australia up to net zero, that was the day he lost the election in 2022, because the electorate said, look, if you're going to adopt Labor Green policy, why don't I just vote for Labor Green or Teals? That's exactly what they did. Now, what that means for the country is we're not actually having a debate about these issues. That's why we're here in places like Bathurst, because no one else is actually communicating that there are real significant problems with this so-called energy transition. It's not even an energy transition because nothing is happening. What we have is a massive energy gap. As these coal-fired power stations close down, nothing is coming into to replace them. And that's not just the IPA saying that. We've had the Australian Energy Market Operator and the Australian Consumer and Competition Commission reinforce those points, saying that we've got critical supply shortfalls on the East Coast. We need to get more baseload power onto the system. So the government's own chief economic and energy bodies are directly contradicting government policy.
Your survey the survey you conducted in those 4 electorates has found a massive shift towards independence. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's right, Fred. So what our survey found is that over 50% of those who we surveyed, and there was over 1,000 Australians across those 4 electorates who were in that survey, it was a nationally representative sample, over 50% said that they were going to vote at the state election in New South Wales for an independent or a minor party, and that is the highest share it's ever been. And this shows that there is discontent with the major parties, and that there's a real search for political representation going on among middle Australia and mainstream Australians on the key issues of energy. We've seen energy bills rising rapidly. It's families, lower income families and small businesses that are incurring the cost the greatest. But they look around the political situation and they say, well, you know, who's actually speaking up for us? So this is the issue that's driving discontent in places like here in Bathurst.
Yeah, well, it's a shame that the coalition isn't speaking up for them, because this, where you're standing now, is coalition heartland. I mean, Labor's barely held any of those seats in 50 years. So, but just to sort of broaden the picture a little bit, Daniel, let's talk about Donald Trump. In 2016, he showed how it was done by defying enormous odds to win an election that simply mostly appealed to the areas that the elites called flyover states. Do you think something like that could happen in Australia if there was a character similar to Trump to ever emerge?
I don't know about the character side of it because our system is so different. It's very hard for an outsider to come in. Remember, Trump was an outsider. He came in and really shook up the establishment. So I don't know whether it's going to be driven by an individual. But in terms of your broader point about a realignment, absolutely that has happened and is happening in Australia at the moment. What we've seen, like at the 2022 election, for example, at the federal level, 16 of the 20 lowest income seats are now held by the coalition. And on the other side, at the wealthiest seats, Labor now represents more wealthy electorates than the coalition does. So the party of Ben Chifley, the party of Gough Whitlam, is now the party of the wealthy inner city elites, and the coalition by default have become the party of the lower income working class. The issue is that there's so many within the Liberal Party establishment that sort of look down on that development and have an assessment that they need to re-win these inner city teal seats, whereas, look, it's much more prospective to go out to the outer suburbs. I mean, they should go to Chris Bowen's seat. They could easily win Chris Bowen's seat in McMahon in the outer suburbs of Sydney with a simple message that resonates with middle Australia. So I think there's a big opportunity there. And to answer your question more directly, absolutely that can happen. What we saw in the US and the UK and across continental Europe absolutely can happen in Australia. It will take a different form because we have compulsory preferential voting, which changes the dynamic in a very significant way. But yes, there is a deep desire of middle Australia to see that realignment take place.